you sit down to study, you have the notes, the textbook, the videos, the motivation. This time will be different. You tell yourself you're finally going to learn everything properly. An hour passes. Then 2, you highlight important sentences. You reread difficult paragraphs. You watch another explanation video just to make sure you understand. By the end of the day, you feel productive. You feel like you've learned a lot. But a week later, something strange happens. Most of it is gone. The details have faded. The concepts feel blurry. And when you try to recall what you studied, your mind returns almost nothing. This experience is so common that millions of students assume there must be something wrong with them. Maybe they aren't smart enough. Maybe they don't have a good memory. Maybe other people are naturally better learners. But neuroscience tells a very different story. The problem is rarely intelligence. The problem is that most people were never taught how learning actually works. They were taught how to consume information, not how to remember it. And those are 2 completely different skills. Your brain is not a storage device. It doesn't save information simply because you spent time looking at it. In fact, your brain is constantly trying to forget. Every day it receives an overwhelming amount of information. Conversations, advertisements, notifications, videos, random facts, names, numbers, opinions. If your brain kept everything, it would become overloaded. So it filters aggressively. Only information that proves its importance survives. And that leads to one powerful question. How do you convince your brain that something deserves to stay? The answer changes everything. Because once you understand how memory is built, studying becomes dramatically more effective. Let's begin. First, learning happens during retrieval, not exposure. Most students believe memory is created while reading. Read enough times and eventually you'll remember. At least that's the theory. But research repeatedly shows that exposure creates familiarity, not memory. Think about a song you've heard hundreds of times in a store. You recognize it immediately. But could you write down every lyric from memory? Probably not. Recognition feels like knowledge, but recognition is not recall. And recall is what matters. The brain strengthens memories when it has to retrieve information without help. Imagine someone asks you a question. For a moment, your brain searches. You struggle. You think. You pull information from storage. That process is what strengthens neural pathways, not seeing the answer, finding the answer. This is why self-testing is so powerful. Read a chapter, close the book, then ask yourself what you remember. Not tomorrow, not next week. Immediately, your recall will feel incomplete, maybe even frustrating. Good. That feeling is a sign that learning is taking place. The struggle is not evidence of failure. The struggle is evidence of growth. Second, your brain remembers meaning, not information. Consider 2 facts. The first is a random phone number. The second is the birthday of someone you love. Which one is easy to remember? The answer has nothing to do with intelligence. It has everything to do with meaning. Human beings are meaning-making machines. The brain constantly asks, why does this matter? How does this connect to what I already know? Where does this fit? Information without meaning is difficult to store. Information with meaning becomes part of a larger network. That's why stories are so memorable. Stories create relationships. They create causes and effects, characters and emotions, problems and solutions. The brain loves connections. So when you're studying, stop asking, how can I memorize this? Ask, how can I connect this? Turn abstract ideas into examples. create analogies, build mental pictures, explain concepts using everyday language. The more connections you create, the easier retrieval becomes. Third, confusion is not the enemy. Many people panic when they don't immediately understand something. They assume confusion means they're bad at the subject. But confusion is often the beginning of understanding. Think about lifting weights. Muscles grow because they are challenged beyond their comfort zone. The brain works similarly. If everything feels easy, very little adaptation occurs. But when information stretches your current abilities, the brain begins building new pathways. The key is productive confusion, not overwhelming confusion. There's a difference. If a concept feels impossible, simplify it. Break it into smaller pieces. But don't avoid difficulty entirely. Learning lives on the edge of discomfort. The students who improve fastest are often the students most willing to feel temporarily confused because they understand something important. Confusion is not a wall. It's a doorway. Fourth, attention is the currency of memory. You cannot remember what you never truly noticed. And modern life is designed to steal attention. Every notification competes for your focus. Every social media feed trains your brain to switch tasks. Every interruption fragments concentration. Many people try to study while checking messages every few minutes. Then they wonder why nothing sticks. The answer is simple. Attention determines encoding. Encoding determines memory. Memory determines recall. Without attention, the entire chain breaks. Even 20 minutes of deep focus can outperform hours of distracted studying. This is why high performers protect their attention aggressively. They remove distractions, silence notifications, focus on one task, one goal, one session, because they understand that memory begins with attention. Fifth, sleep is the hidden study session. Most people think studying ends when they close their books. In reality, some of the most important learning happens afterward. During sleep, the brain processes information gathered throughout the day. It reorganizes experiences, strengthens important connections, and removes unnecessary details. In other words, sleep helps determine what becomes a lasting memory. This explains why staying awake all night often backfires. You may spend extra hours studying, but you reduce your brain's ability to store what you learnt. It's like trying to save files onto a computer while disconnecting the hard drive. The effort is there. The storage process isn't. Sleep is not the reward for studying. Sleep is part of studying. Sixth, repetition works best when it's spaced. Many students rely on cramming the night before the exam, the weekend before the deadline, the last-minute panic session, and it often works temporarily. For a few hours, maybe a few days, then the information disappears. Why? Because the brain interprets mass repetition differently than spaced repetition. When information returns repeatedly across time, the brain assumes it must be important. After all, why would it keep appearing? This is why reviewing material after 1 day, 3 days, 7 days, and 2 weeks can be dramatically more effective than reviewing it 10 times in one evening. The goal isn't to repeat information constantly. The goal is to revisit it strategically. Memory grows stronger each time it survives a period of forgetting. Seventh, teach what you learn. One of the fastest ways to discover what you truly know is to explain it. Imagine teaching a concept to a 12-year-old. Could you simplify it? Could you explain it clearly? Could you answer questions about it? Many people discover something surprising during this exercise. They understand less than they thought, and that's valuable because teaching exposes gaps. It reveals weaknesses. It forces organization. The brain must structure information before communicating it, and that process strengthens understanding. You don't need an audience. You don't need a classroom. Teach an imaginary student. Teach a friend. Teach your phone camera. The method doesn't matter. The explanation does. finally remember this. The biggest learning mistake isn't being distracted. It isn't procrastination. It isn't even forgetting. The biggest mistake is believing that learning should feel easy. Real learning often feels challenging, messy, uncomfortable, slow, but those moments are usually signs that your brain is adapting. The students who remember the most are not always the smartest people in the room. They're the people who understand how memory works. They retrieve, they connect, they focus, they sleep, they review, they teach, and over time, those small habits create extraordinary results. So the next time you sit down to study, don't ask, how long should I study today? Ask a better question. What can I do today that my brain will still remember next month? Because learning isn't about spending more time. It's about giving your brain a reason to keep what matters. And once you learn how to do that, everything changes.